Welcome to Notes to My Legal Self. Together, we explore topics of interest to in-house lawyers. We cover career, practice tips, leadership, the future of law, mental health, legal tech, and much, much more. Know someone who'd make a great guest? Let us know. Self-nominations are encouraged. They're an act of courage. Want to get the most from this conversation? Ask questions, comment, like, follow, say hello. In short, engage. Finally, have fun. In-house legal practice is a serious business, but you don't have to take yourself seriously. Let's begin. Here's your host, Olga Mack.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of Notes to My Legal Self in 2023. Exciting stuff. I know a lot of you are setting goals, thinking about how we're going to make this year productive. And today's conversations is very much about the future and how to make it brighter. We're going to talk about standards, how we're going to embrace that part of law, and how we're going to include everyone on this journey. I have exciting guests with me today, and without further ado, I'll let Damien to introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Damien Riehl. I'm one of the leaders of SALI, the legal data standard, and my day job is with Fast Case Docket Alarm, where I have a large data set of 700 million documents. But SALI is the reason for I'm talking right today.
Okay, and Jim, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, Jim Hannigan, Director of Legal Project Management, Coblitz, Pat, Duffy & Bass in San Francisco, a law firm. I'm one of the leaders of SALI. I've been for a number of years, and just here to make the pitch and get the mission known, because we're very excited about all the things we're doing.
You are guys building some really exciting stuff. Before we talk about SALI, and I promise we will definitely go deep and wide. It's a topic that has been of interest to me for a long time, because I do think that standardization is the future of law. Just how did one get up in the morning and decide to do this? What was the route? What happened? What happened there?
I would say that both, not to speak for Jim, but there has been a need for the last 40 years to standardize the industry. That is, everyone is collecting the same things, but they're doing so in the proprietary format. So the need for interoperability amongst all the stakeholders, that is amongst law firms and clients and vendors, has been a need for the last 40 years that I know Jim and I have both felt. And so SALI is really an opportunity for us to be able to standardize the world of legal data. So that's what gets me up in the morning.
Jim, what about you?
Yeah, for me, it was a little more practical immediately at the point, initially rather, in a role at a law firm, previous law firm in project management, pricing, and innovation. I was just frustrated by the lack of standard data to make the change how we do business. And I heard about the initial flowering of SALI way back 7 years ago, and figured, wow, this is really, to me, it, because this will make us have data that we can use and make lawyers understand and react to better, because the reaction was always, oh, that data is wrong, I can't use it. So it was very hard to get any traction.
So how did it happen? Were you at an event, or were you just socializing? What happened? How did it happen?
It was an old conference called P3. The P's stood for Project Management, Pricing, and Process Improvement. And a group of individuals there decided that this is really something that the industry could use. Toby Brown, Adam Stock, Justin Ergler, I think Mark Medici were some of the initial involved people. And I heard about it through a person at my firm, and we started having meetings, and it just grew from there.
I love it. Go ahead.
Sorry, I first learned about it I was at Stanford's Codex, and Toby spoke at Codex about SALI. And I just finished working at Thomson Reuters, where I was building a large project, which was incorporating a lot of the things that SALI is doing. And so when I heard Toby speak at Stanford Codex, I thought, of course, this is the solution to the problems that the industry has. And so, for him to have that platform at Stanford's Codex was my first introduction.
I think we were at the same event because I think I remember that talk, and I love that Toby comes up a few times in this conversation. I bet you his ears are burning. So let's talk about progress. Where you guys started, it sounds like you've been at it for 7 years. Where you are today, where we're going. We don't have to say it all at once, but maybe one at a time. Where we've been, where we are, where we're
Let
going.
me talk about where it started, and then Damien can get into where we are now. So where it started really was about high-level matter categorization. So the area of law, the work, the jurisdiction, all the key points that we care about when we talk about what a matter is, the substance of a matter. And since then, we've expanded into many other use cases and many other deeper data dimensions than that. But that was the core. That was the initial, impetus, just to have something standardized to explain what a matter was about. What is the legal substance and also the work that the lawyers are doing. Damien, you want to take it from there?
Sure. Yeah. And so the implementation part of it is started with, as Jim said, the areas of law and the type of matter, industries, that sort of thing. But getting implementation was tricky because it was largely people would look at that point, it was about 1,000 data points, including area of law, industry, and service provided. And they say, oh, you don't have documents, or you don't have causes of action, or you don't have all of these things. So largely we've expanded from the release of version 1, which was in 2020, of about 1,500 things that matter. And we've vastly expanded that to about 10,000, now more than 10,000 today. So that is largely people that have said, oh, you don't have the things I need, now say, oh gosh, you actually have all the things that I need and then some. And so really that's really expanded the implementation, where now we have all the major players.
And the people of P3, the initial use case was about pricing and fees, right? So if I'm a law firm, I'm responding to an RFP, I have to get my data clean to make it that client to understand what I'm talking about, all the work that goes into that, and the clients decide the same issue, right? All the data they're getting from firms, how do we know it's similar and consistent, right? So that was the initial use case, but we expanded to many others that we'll go into, I think, soon. But just to give you that background about what we were about originally.
Okay, I love that. And so let's talk about adoption. Like where we are today, 7 years of a lot of hard work. You went from maybe a few data points to now quite a few data points. Tell me where you are.
Yeah, I would say that I've used this analogy that I started with SALI in 2020. I felt like we were pushing a boulder up a hill, trying to first raise awareness of what SALI is in the first place, and then to get adoption. I would say that in the last 6 months to 9 months after the release of version 2 in March of 2022, that boulder is no longer going uphill, but it is rolling very quickly downhill, in that everybody is saying, okay, SALI is the solution. How do I implement SALI? So the types of people, and I'm going to share my screen in a moment here, the types of organizations that are implementing SALI are impressive in ways that you can see here that all the major players, that is the Thomson Reuters and Lexis and Fastcase and Latera, document management, iManage, DocuSign. We also have, Gibson Dunn and Goulston Stewart and Perkins, and then in-house folks like Microsoft and Intel. Everyone is adopting SALI and implementing it, and that nothing attracts a crowd like a crowd. And so the crowd you see on your screen right now is really makes the boulder roll much faster downhill.
I love that crowd. It's like everyone I never heard of. It's a very impressive list. So tell me, I'm just curious. So what happened in March? I mean, March seems like a magical moment. What happened in March?
I can start, and maybe Jim can cover. We released version 2 of the LMSS, which is the SALI standard. Version 2 is different than version 1 in that it went from 1,500 things to about more than 10,000 things. So that's about almost a 10-fold increase of the number of things that we're counting. Secondly, we moved from Excel spreadsheets into XML. And that way, it's now easier for firms and corporations and vendors to implement. Therefore, it's more likely to be able to be useful to the tech people who are actually implementing that. So I think between those two things, the massive expansion of the number of tags, and then the easier implementation through XML and the web ontology language, OWL, that we're using, I think those are the two things that are the biggest ways that put us over the tipping point.
Well, I think that's all true, but I think it was also a culmination of all the work over the years. I think that it was stars lining up with the stakeholder types seeing it, all the work of marketing and publishing, articles and doing these kind of things. We've been doing this for many years. I think it was just it just starting to happen. I think as well as the technical and content advancements we made. I really do feel it was just a matter of getting the right people, also the right people. Well, let me say one other thing. We found the right people, the organizations. It took a long time to find who do we need to target at all the different stakeholder types to make it happen. And that also is bearing fruit now.
One other thing I think that is the happy constellation of things that have been going on is that we are currently the industry is focusing on being able to interoperate. That is to be able to have one organization speak to another organization, largely through APIs. And so as I share my screen here, there are three types of stakeholders for SALI. One is the clients, the corporations. The second is law firms, and the third is vendors. And so there's been API work in the last several years that pushes us over that all of these entities need to talk to each other. But everyone is using different ways. If I'm saying banking law, there are different ways to express banking law. So to be able to build those APIs is really hard. And so where SALI fits in to say, hey, rather than using our proprietary ways to express banking law, why don't we use the standard metadata, the standard tag that is banking law? And so that the three types, clients and firms and vendors, are able to interoperate. So the API explosion that's happened in the last year or two is really helping this, because everyone on all three of these realize that there's not just three vendors, but there's many vendors, and there's many law firms, and there's many clients, and all of these people in the ecosystem need to talk to each other. And SALI is the way that we can talk to each other.
And so when we talk about benefits of talking to each other, for just to connect the dots for the listeners, and what is the benefit, and how will it help individual contributors, whether it's a law firm or corporate or a vendor provider, and how will it sort of help the ecosystem as a whole?
I can start. Maybe the one way to do it is to be able to have standard API queries. So anyone who's implemented an API system is that, if you want to interact with a vendor, for example, you may have 50 fields that you need to be able to connect. And it's really a hard job to map your 50 fields to the vendor's 50 fields. It's hard for you as the client, and it's also hard for the vendor to be able to do that mapping for all of that. So SALI is a way to be able to benefit, to be able to say, hey, we could do that mapping for 50 fields, or each of us can map to SALI, and then we can use SALI as the universal translator for not just this vendor, but for all the vendors that you're using. And the vendors can say, oh, I can map it not just for this law firm or this in-house client, but for all the in-house clients. So that's really the way that the interoperability works, is that everyone, rather than having a bespoke way that they talk about things, they have a standardized way to talk about the tags.
Yeah, and so it both helps individual organizations because of all the systems they're trying to integrate. Being on one data platform makes all that data work together, right? As opposed to being siloed. But then in terms of interoperability across the ecosystem, all the use cases can talk to each other, So all the software vendors that maybe have one use case they solve, they need data from other ones. It's hard to get right now. But if you can get it, then you can make those products better. You can make all the products better, and all the analytics tools we want much better, and have much more capability and possibility in terms of what they can do. Because right now they're stuck with data that's just limited. So it's really kind of a future vision as well as the current, efficiencies gained.
And I'll give a concrete example of that kind of interoperability. Is that Jason Barnwell of Microsoft is using SALI, and one of his use cases, he's got several, but one of his use cases is that Jason said within Microsoft he's got two business units. both of whom need to be able to track two types of things. The first type of thing is what regulator is regulating them, FTC, FCC, et cetera. And then the second part is which regulations are they being regulated by. So he said each of the two business units has to create a list of regulators and regulations by which they're being regulated. He's using SALI as a way to be able to connect those, to be able to say, okay, SALI has FTC, SALI has FCC, and SALI has all the regulatory agencies as part of it. It also has the regulations. So he's using SALI to connect those two business units. And then as a side benefit, he's saying all of the law firms that I'm working with, show me all of your FTC things. Tag up with SALI, all of your FTC things, all your FCC things, et cetera. So that way, both of his business units can talk to each other, and the law firms that they're hiring can also talk in a standardized way. That's just one example of how Microsoft is using it to be able to both interoperate internally within business units as well as externally with law firms and vendors.
Yeah, I love this example. By the way, I love that we gave a shout out to Toby, now to Jason. Those are some of the luminaries in our field who are doing some wonderful work. I love that. I think you don't appreciate how hard it is to talk within the organization until you are in a big organization. And I had a pleasure of being in big and small, and this ability to make conversation happen in your big organization is real. I now have seen it in more than one place. And I love that Jason is connecting various units to help the organization move forward, and then connects it with outside. That's a very big mission for in-house department, especially for in-house department of essentially 5,000 employees or more. That's definitely going to be your challenge for sure, maybe even at 1,000 employees. So let's talk a little bit about future, and then I want to talk about sort of examples and various initiatives that are going on. I'm just curious, if you were to articulate success, when you're looking a year from now, because we're planning 2023, when we're planning 5-10 years from now, what is the definition of success? What would you like to achieve looking back and say, we did some great work? What would that be?
I would say that initially we want to be able to. Google has the motto that they want to organize the world's information. That's a very bold motto. I would say that SALI has a similar motto, that we at SALI want to organize legal data in organization. That is, we want to be able to say, if it matters in the law, both to the substance of law and to the business of law, we want to count it. We want to, because both of those things matter as to things that are in the business of law. For example, how much does a deposition cost? Well, it depends. Is it a patent infringement deposition, or is it a slip and fall deposition? That will move the pricing up and down. So patent infringement and slip and fall, those are both substantive areas, but pricing is the business of law. So really, we count both. We count the substantive areas and the business of law. And so I would say in the future, I think success would mean that everything that matters to those two spheres, that is the substance of law and business of law, we want to be able to count them and standardize them for the entire industry to be able to interoperate with those things.
Yeah, and to tag along on that, I mean, so just so people are reminding people we're a nonprofit. We don't do implementation. We help people implement. We are just building a taxonomy, and we're trying to get adoption of the taxonomy. So to us, success is really just adoption of not the entire taxonomy by everybody. It's impossible. Really, the taxonomy is like a grocery store. You pick and choose what you need. But to us, success would be in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, more and more buyers, sellers of legal services, and vendors of software are using the tags to share data, and they're saying, here's SALI tags we can use, and we can interchange our data much more effectively. That's really what we're all about. And SALI is not an organization that is, we're not a standards body that just puts out standards and walks away. We want to get adopted. A lot of our work is on the adoption side, working with people. That's a lot of time we spend is not just on building it, but also getting the implementation happening. Because that's where that's why we're here. We wanted to make it happen. We want to make it, to succeed and get done. So that's really it, Olga. It's really just about adoption of the taxonomy and pieces that make everybody's lives better in terms of their products and their services and their software.
Yeah, we at Part of the Pro got involved with SALI almost as soon as I joined because contracts has a lot of data, and we found our conversations with every customer to be completely different. And, I just looked at my co-founders and I said, there gotta be a better way to have these conversations to scale our business. And we all got excited when we started talking to SALI. I know you guys have a number of projects, and let's talk about contracts, because I happen to love contracts, but we're gonna talk about all of them because I love them all too. Maybe not always equally at the same time, depending when I'm focused. But let's talk about sort of what's happening on the contract side, and then I do want to talk about APIs and bankruptcy and immigration and other things that are happening, so that are super exciting.
Yeah, I think that the one of the most exciting things that we're doing is the contract side. So to be able to everyone counting things like document type and clause types, and the beauty is that we've now gotten some of the biggest players in the industry to be able to work on standardizing those document types and clause types. So you can see here, you can see that this is a demonstration of SALI. This is using a tool from Stanford called Web Protege. And so as you say, okay, what are some document types? You can look at transactional document types, and then you look at agreements, and we've already got a really good list of types of agreements that are being counted and tagged. So you have loans, you have licenses, letters of credit, etc. And so we're also in the sandbox working on contractual clauses. That is, what are act of God clauses, and agency for service clauses and force majeure clauses. So we've got a really good base list of about 650 of these clause types. And the really exciting project that we're working on right now is to be able to take these clause types and to take these document types and work with some of the biggest luminaries in the industry. That is working with Noah Weisberg from Zuva, and working with Olga, and working with also Contract Pod AI, working with Alex Hamilton from Radiant Law, and a whole bunch of others whose names I'm forgetting. But we're all essentially going out to be able to standardize. Here are all the standard agreement types, and here are all the standard clause types for us to be able to then have interoperability amongst all the contract lifecycle management vendors and all of the other folks to be able to standardize the way that we describe a document and clauses.
By the way, the only reason I'm the member is because you attract all my friends. I figured that if all my, if Noah's gonna be in the room and Alex is gonna be in the room and Jason is gonna be in the room, that's gotta be a great party. So I'm joining. I mean, that just full disclosure, I'm here for the party.
Nothing attracts a crowd like a crowd.
It's a great crowd. You can't do better. I love it. Jim, do you want to talk about contracts, or would you rather?
Oh, he covered it. I mean, really, it's an example of what I was talking about earlier about a new use case. So remember, the LMSS is really about legal matter data, but the documents and the contracts are the lifeblood of the matter, right? It's what lawyers mainly work on, which is documents. So getting into the depths of that is really just more add-on value to the initial use case I talked about we first started with. So it really exemplifies that, and it's a good one too, because SALI, the original SALI use case was for a taxonomy that really there was no public one. There was no popular taxonomy for areas of law and so forth. This one, though, has people have worked on for many years, and we think we can add value by helping to bring together key players like you mentioned to say, let's just come up with one for the names of these things that we can agree on, and then we can go build our products. So I think that's a good example of that value add that SALI's bringing.
And I would say that to add on to that, there are three types of standards that I think are important to note. That is, we are the first type that is metadata tag standards. That is things like force majeure tag and a merger agreement tag. Those are the tags. That's standard type number one. But there's also standard type number two, which is content standards. That is, what is the best language for a force majeure clause in a merger agreement in the agriculture industry, right? That content standard is not something that we at SALI are doing. We're merely doing the tags, that is force majeure and merger agreement and agriculture industry. Merely the tags, the standard language, that's somebody else's job. And that's largely the contract lifecycle management folks and the others. But I would say that thing number one of us being able to tag up force majeure clauses in merger agreements, that's maybe necessary before you get to part two. That is, first you have to collect all the force majeure clauses and all of the merger agreements. And then once you do that, then you can run the analyses using AI or otherwise to be able to say, okay, what are the most common force majeure clauses in merger agreements? And then you get, once you tag, then you can collect and figure out what's market in the industry. So I would say that we are not doing content.
You're doing important work of collecting and classifying. And then based on that, you can then actually do some number crunching and analysis to figure out what's best under what circumstances. And it could be that, in very narrow circumstances, you see outlier behavior. So this is very important work, and it's laying a lot of groundwork for success of the future. It's a huge, infrastructure is usually a huge investment into the future, and what we're building here is infrastructure, and that's why it's important. I'm sadly going to move forward away from contracts. It's going to require some disappointment on my part, but for the benefits of others, and to highlight the work you're doing, I want to talk a little bit about the API group, and maybe a few other initiatives that are happening at SALI.
Sure. The API group is one of the most exciting things that I'm excited about, and that really fulfills what we were talking about earlier, is allowing clients and law firms and vendors all to interoperate. The way that generally people interoperate with machines is through APIs. That is, I as a user do an API call to a vendor usually, and then that vendor gives an API response. And the way that SALI is playing into that is that we are, as I share my screen, we're able to show that if you are looking for an affiliate agreement, for example, as one of the agreements, each of the things in our 10,000 things that we're collecting, affiliate agreements is one of those. Each of them has a unique identifier that is an IRI. And so if you're making an API call saying, hey, vendor, send me all of your affiliate agreements, what you would do is you would do an API call with this unique identifier. And then the vendor would give you all of their affiliate agreements. Then if you say, okay, now give me all the affiliates agreements with force majeure clauses, you would then send this IRI to be able to say, okay, I want the force majeure clauses. You would send that. And so this is a way for that interoperability to happen. And so we have some of the biggest names in legal tech helping build this API protocol. That is, what are the things that we want to ask for in the API call? And then how do the vendors respond to those API calls in a standardized way? So this is really the future of APIs, we think, is that rather than having to say, well, this is a TR API call, which is different than the Lexis API call, which is different than the iManage API call. In the future, we'll be able to say, just do the SALI API call for all of those. And then you'll be able to get a uniform response from all of those folks.
I just love it that you eased my pain by referring to some contracts. It just made it a lot better. I appreciate that. Really cool. Jim, you want to add anything about API project? Because I am really impressed with the work you're doing there, or would you like to move forward to
I think I want to make one of the points. So people talk about what's taking so long, just building a taxonomy. One of the issues was always software vendors having concerns about giving a proprietary information. I think they finally made the realization this is going to benefit them because it's just basic information. It's not anything that's that is critical to their business or their strategy, other than the fact you need it. The fact that's
pretty critical. If you need it, you need it.
Well, you need it, but it's not something you shouldn't be able to get without much investment, right? You shouldn't. It's not what you're investing your money into is the taxonomy. That's like basics input. But if we all have the same inputs, then we can all worry about more of the products we want to build and solving customers' needs. So to me, it exemplifies how the vendors have finally come up and realized that there is a benefit to this, and they need to be on board. So that's really the point I want to make, is just it signifies the progress we've made in that front.
That's right. Things like merger agreement, things like breach of contract, things like negligence. None of these are proprietary to any vendor or any law firm. So Jim is right that the vendors are realizing that, and that's why they're on board.
Yeah, we have a few more questions, and I do want to talk a little bit about other projects that do not have contracts in them, and I do want to talk a little bit about sort of, SALI as a nonprofit and its position and where it's trying to go and how others can help. So let's talk about other projects, bankruptcy or immigration or whatever else you guys want to talk about.
Sure, I can maybe start with the bankruptcy side. Is that we're working with some folks like Nancy Rappaport from UNLV, and then Joe Triano of Legal Decoder. They've assembled a who's who of bankruptcy law practitioners. That is the largest law firms in the country, and some of the most renowned bankruptcy judges in the country are working with us on a project to be able to standardize bankruptcy nodes, bankruptcy tags. So what we've done there is to be able to ingest all of the things that are in Pacer. That is all the things that matter in Pacer. And then we've also built on top of that to be able to say, what are all the things that a bankruptcy lawyer does? That is to be able to assess value for assets, to be able to figure out who the creditors are and who the debtors are, et cetera. So all the work, where essentially that bankruptcy work is being able to tag up all the things that matter to bankruptcy lawyers and then be vetted by the biggest practitioners in the industry and the best judges in the world. And then the second is the immigration group. That is the American Immigration Law Association, AILA, is working with us to be able to do the same thing for immigration law, to be able to say what matters for immigration lawyers, what are H-1B visas matter, a bunch of other documents matter, what are the processes that immigration lawyers work with their clients. We're essentially tagging and mapping all of those things for both bankruptcy and immigration. So those are two very exciting things that I'm excited about.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to give a little more of color on version 2, which came out in March, really also had we didn't go into it, a deep dive in litigation. So version 1 was, like I said, the high level areas of law and basics. Version 2 included a very, very extensive litigation taxonomy that Damien largely drove. And so these are examples like that of practice areas that we're drilling into deep to add into the standard for people in need to have that. But one thing that we're doing is SALI is we're figuring out, well, what's unique to bankruptcy or immigration, what's not. So if they come to us with a motion to do something, we already have it. Is it general or is it more specific? That's where SALI adds value, because we're simplifying all this stuff down, right? We're not. Part of the problem we see up until now is there's been over complexity of it all, because there's no organization to it. So that's really what we're doing as well, is just simplifying it down so that you can understand it better and it can be used effectively.
Yeah, well, both are federal practices, so they should have some commonality. But Damien, go ahead.
Yes, and so as I share my screen, the one of the examples to because seeing is often just as good as being able to show. So here's the bankruptcy practice. So for example, here's what do I need to do to analyze assets? I do due diligence, I do valuation, you work with financial advisors, I work with non-litigation, et cetera. So these are all things that you could think of this almost like a task list. That is, what are all the tasks that I need to both assign to the client and to assign to my associates, et cetera. We're counting all the things that matter in bankruptcy practice, and most importantly, throwing that unique identifier on them so that everyone can tag them uniformly.
Yeah. We're sadly coming to the end. I have maybe one question. I do want to touch on sort of the nonprofit status, the open sourceness of the work product. What is the philosophy? How you guys view yourselves? Who's going to have access to this? This is clearly might have been started by the group of luminaries, but to lift something of this size requires an industry-wide effort from all kinds of experts. Some of them have been mentioned, and many of them have not. And this is the kind of project that I would describe as a painting the Golden Gate Bridge. You start, it takes like years. And when you're done, you kind of start all over. Maybe not completely all over. You don't have to rebuild the bridge, but you have to make sure that it's still holding up and it's still current, and then use a state-of-the-art technology and reflect back on the reality where it exists. So what is the view of painting this Golden Gate Bridge?
I think that that's a good analogy of the Golden Gate Bridge. And I think that the fact that SALI is a nonprofit and everything that we're doing is free and open source helps make that Golden Gate Bridge happen, because that way it is not one company pushing a thing, and there's not a hurdle of expense to be able to get over to be able to implement it. It is a nonprofit that is agnostic as to law firm, agnostic as to vendor, agnostic as to client. And so in that way, everyone can be on board to be able to help paint the Golden Gate Bridge, because it is a massive effort to be able to count all the things that matter in the law. And so that's thing number one. Thing number two is that collaboration between vendors and law firms and clients is really important to be able to make sure that we get it right. And so one way that we're doing that is through Web Protege, which is the what I've been showing off, Sally. That is a collaborative platform where there are about 85 people that have access to that platform. And so as somebody has an aspect of the Golden Gate Bridge that they want to say, hey, we're not yet counting this tag. Should we do this? Then everyone can chime in and say, yeah, that's actually a good idea. We should be able to do this. And so in this way, it is truly it takes a village to build a legal ontology. And so it takes a village to build the Golden Gate Bridge. We are building that village, and the nonprofit status and also the free and open aspect of it is really the way that we can do that at scale. It wouldn't work if it were otherwise.
Yeah. And I think Damien covered the nonprofit benefit. I mean, just the fact that we have no allegiance to any one organization, or so, that's clear. We're neutral. But in terms of the building of this, a lot of the work you do once and you're done unless the law changes. So it's really about maintenance and adding. So, maintenance is just keeping up with the law. It doesn't change that much. That's not too hard. But adding on is, it takes projects with people, and we really benefit from getting individuals to help us on those specific projects, like we mentioned, to help lead them and direct them and have do some legwork. But really, it's about sharing the wealth in terms of the work and getting it done so we can add it in. But again, it's not like we have to build a bridge every 5 years.
That's right.
And also one good one, and it will last us for generations.
And to that point of lasting for generations, people have asked, okay, so there is an IRI for merger agreement. Is that ever going to change? And the answer to that is no, it will not. It will last for generations because that will stay the same. There might be a child of merger agreement. That is a type of merger agreement, or many types of merger agreements. Those might be added, but the merger agreement tag itself will never change. So that really helps build stability in the platform, where people say, well, should I adopt it because it might change tomorrow? The answer is no, it will not change tomorrow. It will stay the same. There might be additions to it, but it will never be.
And it's a good time to bring up another point, which is international, and how can other jurisdictions? Yes, a lot of the people involved were originally U.S. based, UK based, but we have found that, and we intended this way, that it is universal. The categories are not specific to jurisdiction; they're very general. So therefore, we don't have to worry about building a version of this for every country. We're hearing that over and over again, people that are saying this works for me in such and such place. So that's really another very helpful aspect to it, that we don't have to worry about that level of building for every jurisdiction. But we do want to have tweaks on it, right? We do need to modify and adjust. We've done that for one or two countries, but it's not like we have to build this for every country around the world, because the stuff is really the same, frankly, in terms of what we've already built.
And a good example of that is that we have real estate assets as this thing that we're counting. And a group in the UK was going through it, and they said, wow, it's you have everything we need, except you don't have pubs. That is, you don't have public houses. And so it was easy enough to be able to say, okay, we tweaked it to be able to say, okay, now we've added public houses under hospitality. That is a thing that the UK needed, and we've added that. So, but largely everything was universal. They only needed that one little tweak, and Sally was happy to work with them on that. So for anyone who's implementing, please, to the extent that you see something that's missing, tell us, and we'll work with you.
Oh, I love it. You guys are doing such wonderful service. I'm happy to start my year with you. You're doing a lot of good in the world. You're persistent, and you got the builder up, and I'm so glad it's going in the right direction. So thank you for all your hard work. Thank you for sharing all the things you're doing, all the ways folks can help you. We sadly have to part. And I want to make sure that you maybe have an opportunity to say goodbye and maybe give one takeaway to folks, because we've covered a lot of ground. We went deep and wide. We talked all kinds of things for vendors, for law firms, for in-house corporates. We talked about various areas of the law, and we even got to international. So we covered the whole world. But maybe we can talk about the one thing so can help you, can maybe direct this boulder in the right way, maybe paint the Golden Gate Bridge better, whatever they can do, the one thing you can ask them, now is the time to do it.
I would say, just if come to us if you want help. I mean, we all the time talk to organizations that say, "Where do I start? What do I do? I'm confused. It's too much," and that's perfectly normal. And we're glad to talk it through to anyone and direct you to the right people and link you up with software vendors or whoever that can help as well. So it's not like you're all by yourself. It's not just me and Damien's, others too, and the other we can put you in touch with that can help.
Oh, that's right. I would add to that really a lot of the work is just to be able to say, what are the things you're already counting as an organization? And then we just map them to what SALI's doing. Jim and I are happy to work with you to do that work. So to the extent you're interested in saying, how would implementing SALI mean to my organization, please reach out to us and we're happy to help.
And it's free.
And it is free, $0. We're a nonprofit after all. And secondly, because we're a nonprofit, we have zero marketing dollars. So organizations like this, Olga's being able to spread the word is really the way that we get implemented. So thanks so much, Olga, for having us on. That word of mouth is largely the way that we get spread. So thank you for helping spread the good word.
It's a list I can do. You guys are doing all the hard work, and it's my pleasure and honor to support that. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Damien. Thank you, Jim. I think it's a very positive way to start 2023. I am certainly excited, and I would love for you to check out SALI and the ways you can be part of this monumental and very important effort, historic effort, and the way we can move this industry forward together. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you for stopping by. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Notes to My Legal Self. Know someone who'd make a great guest? Let us know. Self-nominations are encouraged. They are an act of courage. Remember, the future of law is bright. Enjoy your in-house practice. It's an adventure of a lifetime. See you soon.